starting with the Teachers College team. So we have Noah Kopak. She has a great experience, co-founded a company looking at, especially at climate advocacy and climate impact. She was nominated as one of the Forbes 30 under 30 in 2020, and now she's a graduate student at Teachers College. And we have Christina Torres, also like very strong experience in the past, was also part of a startup back then. She's a PhD student at Teachers College. And together they are also collaborating with Oren Pismoni-Levy, who happens to be in Israel right now, and that cannot join, and was an associate professor at Teachers College. And they've been really looking at the impact of educators' perception on climate change and how we can have more of an impact in terms of providing climate data information to a broad range of stakeholders, especially on the educational side. So very much looking forward to your work.
Thank you so much. I see Oren.
Yes, I'm going to turn Oren around.
You all hear me? Great. Well, again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having us. Like Pierre said, this is research that's being done at Teachers College, but we're proudly partnering with LEAP to think about these bigger questions of diversity in the climate movement, and what does that mean specifically for our knowledge transformation here at LEAP. You'll notice our title here is a little bit different than the one that you saw advertised, TikTok Cheese Sticks in Our Future, How Educators Perceive Students' Engagement with Climate Change. We're more than happy to talk more about the beginning of that title in Q&A. And we've had a great fortune to talk with teachers and ask them to use metaphors and focus groups to explain how they perceive their students' engagement with climate change. And they used a lot of really great metaphors to explain that engagement. We're also proud to say that this work is has been accepted at AERA and CIES. So AERA is the American Educational Research Association annual conference, and CIES is the Comparative International Education Society's annual conference. So our foundational motivation for this work has to do with the global youth climate movement, which you all are probably already aware of. The resurgence started with Greta Thunberg's work, protesting every Friday on the steps of Swedish Parliament, not going to school to urge governments and adults to do work related to climate action. This sprung an entire organization called Fridays for Future, where kids all over the world do not go to school every single Friday to protest for climate change. This came to a huge surge back in 2019. You can see that huge participation spike, where over 1 million people globally, specifically youth, marched for climate. We did see a sharp decline due to the pandemic, but we're now seeing a resurgence of kids marching in the streets. And over the years since this youth climate movement has been going on, what has come into question is the diversity of this movement. It is largely, while it is largely youth-led, it is also largely white. And while age and gender of the youth climate movement has been studied a lot in the literature, the race and ethnic demographics of this movement has not. For this work, we're specifically focusing on New York City as a case. Why New York City is special? It has the largest public school district in the country. And we also have institutionalized sustainability education. It has to do with a chancellor's regulation A850. And we're specifically part of that legislation zeroing in on one part of it called the sustainability coordinator mandate. So every school in the New York City public school system has a person called a sustainability coordinator. That coordinator doesn't need to be a teacher. They can be an assistant principal, they can be support staff, but their goal is to create these partnerships and resources related to sustainability for students and staff. A lot of what we know related to race and ethnicity and engagement in climate comes from these large public opinion surveys that are done. You might be familiar with the Yale public opinion maps that are quite famous that people use. What we're showing right here is a figure from the Yale public opinion maps. And what we know is that we're looking at the two middle rows here for Black and Hispanic concern for climate change. We know BIPOC individuals tend to be more concerned about climate change than white individuals. They also, from our other work in public opinion, not shown here, that we do with the Center for Sustainable Futures, know that they also tend to advocate more for climate change education. But even though they're advocating for education and have this concern, there's a gap between the diversity that we see in these spaces and then who's actually marching in the streets for climate change. What you're seeing on the left here is the ethnic makeup of New York City public schools. In the middle, you're seeing the makeup of our own research, who's showing up to the global climate protests in 2021 and 2022. And you can see, if we're looking at the gray bar in the middle for Latinx individuals, 41% of New York City public school students are Latinx, but in 2021, only 10% of the people who came to the climate march were Latinx. So we're seeing this disconnect between worry and concern for the movement, motivation for the movement, but then who is actually showing up to do the action, which was our thinking around our initial framework for approaching this research project. The reason we're focusing on the educator here, and specifically the sustainability coordinator, is that educators are these social agents that interact with youth on a daily basis. And through interacting with youth, they can form differing opinions of their engagement with climate change education. And with those differing opinions, that might influence the learning opportunities that they create for their students. And then finally, that could influence which students are participating in climate action and which students are not. The two research questions at the center of this work is, how do these sustainability coordinators in New York City public schools perceive their students' engagement with climate change? And to what extent do these perceptions vary by the teacher's individual characteristics and the school level demographics? We are lucky enough to have a research practice partnership with the New York City Department of Education, specifically with the Office of Energy and Sustainability, where we work with them to create these annual surveys to look at these questions with the sustainability coordinators. This is a sequential mixed method study, so we use this survey data and then did quantitative analysis on it. And from our understandings from that quantitative work, then did qualitative-based research to try to understand better and dig into the quant work. For these surveys that we're working with the sustainability survey from 2021 and 2022. We're also looking at another piece of administrative data from the Department of Education, which are the school demographics and characteristics. For our qualitative piece, we did 7 focus groups with 39 sustainability coordinators from November 2022 to February 2023. And in these, we probed further about how they engage their students with climate change, how they perceive their students' interest in climate change. And we also asked them to interpret our quantitative results. We shared our Zoom and we shared what Noah's going to explain, the different results that we found in our quantitative work, and asked them if our patterns made sense. For our analytical strategy, we did OLS, or ordinary least squares, and logistic regression models. We controlled for the coordinator socio-demographics, their role in the school, motivation, years of experience, and the actual size of the school. So we can really understand what we think are the key predictors, which is climate concern, the grade level of the students, the borough that they're situated in. We see from our previous research really different engagement in the movement with Staten Island versus Manhattan and the different boroughs of New York City. And then the socio-demographic composition of the student body. And then for our qualitative analysis with the transcripts of what we learned from the teachers in the focus groups, we did thematic analysis.
Okay. So we're getting into the findings portion of the presentation. Let me just orient you here on what we see. So we said the coordinators go through these surveys twice a year. This is showing results of responses by almost 1,400 coordinators on the survey. The question that we asked was what they think, how many students in your school have the following characteristics? And we were asking about these different domains of engagement. So at the top, you see about students' curiosity about climate change, and we go in this like scale all the way up to engage with people who are already engaged with climate action and activism. And the percentage represents the share of coordinators who responded, for example, for 36%, said that many of their students are curious or want to learn about climate change. So, two things to note just on this. We see certainly that there is a big change, a big trend from the, let's say, lower levels of engagement, curiosity and knowledge, going up to climate action, right? So 36 and 6%, let's say 42 are said that many or all of their students have the curiosity to learn about climate change. And then when you go up the scale of engagement, the numbers become smaller and smaller. Dates, grades. So this is 1,400 educators, coordinators from all grade levels, all boroughs. This doesn't show us any. Yes, K-12. Sorry, K-12. Yes. Where am I? And then, as Christina mentioned, they showed the results to our teachers. We talked with 39 sustainability coordinators and asked them to make sense of those results for us. And generally speaking, they echoed the analysis. They said, yes, there is some awareness, but the engagement is really not that high or large when it comes to being already active in the movement. The overarching reason for that they gave for this lack of interest was that the youth didn't have any close contact with climate change or its effects. So this is why they're less understanding of it, or maybe just less interested in understanding it. And you can see a little bit of some quotes and some ideas from those focus groups. You know, certainly many teachers spoke of the stress that they have to face with standardized testing and the focus that they have to spend in class. So, like, you know, how can educators and students have any space, time to talk about climate change? Climate change is too big, too complicated. So those are some examples of the rationalization or explanation that we got on those results. Then what we did is we looked at the correlation between what coordinators think, so the perceptions of, again, this is all, we're not really talking about the students' engagement, but about educators' perceptions of the student engagement, and how that correlates with the type of students that the schools serve. So x-axis shows the share of students living in poverty. So the left side, none, means more affluent schools. Y-axis shows us the percentage of responses. So the 60% at the top is the 60% of those teachers said that their students are engaged, okay, or many or all of the students. And we have all of the domains of engagement that we showed in the previous slide for each of those lines. And we saw that for all domains of engagement, even though a little bit different in the slope, there is a negative trend. So the more, when coordinators work in schools that serve more marginalized students, right side, the coordinators tend to view the students as less engaged across all domains of engagement. That's the main idea behind this graph here. And when we took that, and we also showed this to the educators, the sustainability coordinators, asked them to explain that for us. And again, here, generally, most participants rationalize the pattern, saying that for their students, the hierarchy of needs, or where the students meet the idea of climate change, is just not, you know, many students live in temporary housing, many students have other concerns such as food insecurity, and this the concern or definitely engagement with activism, with climate change, just goes down to this. Some other explanations were around opportunities, so less exposure to travel and to see other places and the effects of climate change, or just the less possibility to spend the money on sustainable practices, less accessible, less available for those students. Small minority of the participants did mention bias, and I want to just read out some of these quotes. Someone said, it's important to name institutional racism and our biases about what people care or don't care about. We can't assume these assumptions. This is about our perceptions regarding low-income kids, not about their actual engagement with climate. Because students live hand to mouth, does that mean that they don't care or think about the stuff? There could be an interest if they were presented with it. Maybe we don't ask them. Some additional findings outside of those main concerns that we looked at. Respondents who are more concerned about, this is from the quant part, respondents who are more concerned about climate change also perceive more of their students as engaged with the topic. Respondents working in middle schools or high schools perceive more students to be engaged with climate change, so that answers the question about the age groups. And compared to their counterparts in Manhattan, the most affluent and probably the most progressive urban city, respondents in Queens and Staten Island perceive fewer students to be engaged with climate change. So, of course, if we see educators as socialization agents, and we know that these patterns could inform the way they teach and what they bring into the classrooms, we might see that schools with higher concentrations for students will have fewer teaching opportunities on the topic. And what we are trying to do at the Center for Sustainable Futures, we try to think of ways to translate those findings into interventions. So the two things that I'd like to mention here today, one targets the youth and the other one targets the educators. Youth at the Center is a initiative that tries to aims to bridge youth interest in climate with the resources that we have here at Columbia. Our current project is our workshops, storytelling workshops, where students, kids around the city write their climate stories and we upload them to a virtual repository. It's our current project with them. And then the Summer Institute that was, of course, hosted here in the summer and is a part of a 5-year grant to NSF that aims to teach and train New York City public school teachers on climate change education. It's a 5-year plan with the first year this summer and 4 more. And I guess we're going to end with these remaining questions, and of course we're happy to take any questions. We'd love to hear what do you think are the implications of this work for our knowledge transformation here at LEAP? How can we better engage formal K-12 education with our climate data science research at LEAP? And more specifically, the same question, but of course through the lens of equity and inclusion, which as we see is just very evident in our results. So thank you very much. We're happy to take questions. If you can have or also maybe on the screen.
Yeah, or over here. I can put them up with you guys.
Thank you.
I think something that you mentioned that I think he also indicated the responses was about resources, right? So in schools who have fewer resources also can provide, like fewer materials and ideas and just opportunities, I imagine, for the sustainability work. Like my daughter goes to a Title I school, and the program has I can see that they're doing a lot of amazing things, but on a restrict that. So I don't know, are there opportunities here to not just like propose activities, but there's also like a break place to say, okay, or maybe, we have this funding dedicated to climate change education where there is a higher need. We could have this impact. Is also something that you are participating or really job at.
Or do you have anything to say? If not, I'll jump in. So the Office of Energy and Sustainability is thinking a lot about this. There's actually a sustainability grant that teachers can apply for. Something that we didn't talk about in in this presentation is that now in the mayor, there are 4 mandated climate action days that every year school has to do, and each day has a different theme related to climate change. The problem is that the sustainability coordinators and the schools that tend to have the resources and support have the better programming related to climate change. Where we think that these inequalities in the first level will be replicated. So I would say it's definitely a dream, and I think that's a dream of the Summer Institute, right? How do we take these 40 teachers that we talked to last summer, and how do we turn that to 200? How do we not just get teachers in a room? How do we get administrators in a room, right? Something that we literally talked to our teachers last night, and we're hearing. We got to school, it's September, we have all of these amazing resources from the Summer Institute, new mandated curriculum, we can't teach anything that's not in the workbook. We have an administrator that doesn't even believe in climate change. What do I do? So I think there are a lot of uphill battles in a school that are tied to funding, but some aren't even related to funding. It's a huge multivariate problem, but we hope through the Summer Institute, through Youth at the Center, that we actually hit all of these touch points, especially in the schools that don't get the need that they deserve.
I'll add that, so the policy aspect is of course a big part, and while we have a lot to say about standardized and mandated curriculum, the city is, sooner rather than later, probably is going to adopt a climate change curriculum that will be mandated. It happened in other states, it will happen here, no doubt, probably pretty soon. So that will bring climate change to any school, all schools. Different problems over that, but.
Lauren heard the full question.
The full question was about resources, and if we see those disparities in resources at home, of course, we also see it as in schools and what kind of interventions or
and just just like the Office of Sustainability, like these climate action days exist, there are these things that exist, but it isn't necessarily fixing the inequality.
Hi, thank you for the talk. That was really interesting. I'm curious if you found other partners in informal education, in museums or NGOs or other organizations that are additionally providing resources and education to young people, or are you finding that the primary mechanism that young people hear about and learn about climate change is through school?
There are hundreds of organizations working in the New York City area. I would say there is access to those organizations outside of schools, but there's also a lot of work between schools and those organizations. So they bring a lot of the funding and the resources, not just money, it's skills and workshops and the garden that someone needs to attend, which is a big thing in New York City schools. Organizations come into the schools and that way it gets exposed to those two. I think many kids spend so many hours a day at school.
Yeah, and I would just highlight that, with our LEAP Summer Institute that we had this past summer, we partnered with Subject to Climate, which is a open source curriculum materials website where teachers can go on and find standard aligned materials K through 12. What's really cool about their website, that is a similar principle that we took in our Summer Institute, is that it's transdisciplinary. So let's say you are a 4th grade teacher and you're trying to hit an English standard and you want to teach something related to climate change, you could find something. So we worked with them, and we're these are teachers from the Summer Institute are writing their lessons based on the subject to climate template. So there are like curricular resources for teachers. There are also things that are more student facing. I would say definitely challenges are that transdisciplinary aspect is you'll find a lot for science. You'll find a lot for high school science. There's a reason this summer we started with elementary school teachers. It's where the largest need is. And also for not just the curricular needs, but these programming, like again, the schools that tend to have the most resources are the ones that get to go to A&M and see the climate wall, right? They're the ones who get to go hang out with the Billion Oyster Project and, you know, go to the coast and see things. So there's definitely disparities there in the program with the actual like museum institutions that are doing this work.
Molly, is it possible for me to say something? Can everybody hear me or? Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for attending. The question about the NGOs and the community-based organizations is a really good one because we've been identifying that that sector is really understudied. We got a grant last year and we are mapping now all the NGOs and CBOs that are providing climate change education worldwide. We identified already around 4,000 of them. We send them a survey, we are mapping their needs, and it seems to be that they have even greater needs than the teachers in New York City, especially around access to knowledge around climate and how to visualize it, how to present it. And we hope that that will be another piece of our partnership with LEAP moving forward, how to address their needs, because many education systems are relying on this sector to actually do the work. So the question is great and we are on it. I hope that we'll be able to share some findings next year.
For the discussion.
Great, thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you for the contribution.